Welcome to the Connection Podcast. I am Lauren Dry, also known as the Connection Catalyst. Connection and this podcast for me is personal. As a driven professional, I found myself an expert in all things work and business, but it was at home that I really needed clarity and ease. After finally finding it one marriage breakdown and one marriage reset later, and finally discovering what really works to have connection in modern relationships, using science, simplicity and soul, our signature program Rise into Regulation was born that's giving so many others in modern driven relationships back clarity and ease for good. On the podcast today, we're going to dive deep together on all things relationships, business, identity and leadership. And clarity and ease is at the heart of it all, and we are so happy to be with you so that you can have what you need in connection, mind, body and soul too. Hi, and welcome back to the Connection Podcast. This is an episode that I know is going to be so important for so many of us. And that is around looking back and loving in review a family that might not be perfect. So if you have ever looked back at your family and felt torn, maybe grateful for how they shaped you, but honest about the ways that they weren't perfect, or maybe you have a complex relationship with your family right now and you're not sure what a boundary looks like versus a wall and how to have that healthy dynamic, you're going to want to hear this one. Because today I'm joined by Dr. Nancy Dome, a speaker and author who's spent years exploring how the families we grow up in, imperfect as they are, shape who we become. And if you are listening to this podcast and you love patterns, you're going to know how important this is. We are going to get into what it actually means to look back at your family honestly and love them in a healthy way, the difference between forgiving them and understanding them, and how their patterns show up in your own relationships, even when you don't realize it. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Nancy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Lauren.
Of course. I've been really excited about this podcast, and I would love to start off, first of all, by getting curious. Why do you think that this is the episode that the audience should be listening to right now?
Well, this idea of patterns is so important. And I was inspired about Sankofa. This is what kind of started my journey, this idea of looking back to move forward. And I really have realized that when we can heal and let go of the past experiences that tend to shape us and maneuver us in directions that maybe we don't like, that we end up having the life that we believe we should have or we want to have. And so I think that that would be appealing to most people, to really look at healing ourselves and starting with ourselves instead of looking externally to what we think may be causing it, and really doing that self-reflection to see what part do I play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious. I'd love to dive in a little bit more about your story and how you found this work.
hmm
But first of all, for someone who's never heard the word Sankofa before,
hmm
can you explain what that means and what it's about?
Yeah, it is a Ghanaian symbol, actually. And it's a bird that's facing forward, but its head is turned back and it has an egg in its head. And it's the idea that it literally translates into go back and get it. And so this idea that you have to go back and get the information and honor really the ancestors, the shoulders that you stand on to be where you are, even if they're imperfect shoulders, just this idea that many people came before you to get you to where you are. And so you go back and get it. You get the knowledge, you get the healing, you get the love, all the things that you may not see because we're so focused on moving forward without honoring our past.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a
Yeah.
beautiful image. Now, Nancy, you are a renowned speaker, author, and coach who co founded Epoch Education in 2014, which is aimed at giving leaders in education and business accessible professional development that's focused on effective communication, equity and inclusion and belonging. And your work speaks for itself around the impact and the importance of this support and these tools. I'm curious, in your own personal life, in your own journey, where did the importance of this work begin? What was your own journey to finding that harmony in your own life?
It's a good question because I would say honestly that it began when I was very young, and just the way I process things, right? The way I always was as a person. I was called too sensitive by my brothers. I really care about people and strangers. It was just something in me. But I just never named it. And then this idea of recognizing that the things that I was teaching through my business was really related to that stuff that was just core in me. And I thought it came out of research until I started to look back and realize that it actually was the way I lived, that my protocol was really natural. It was a natural way of being curious, of wanting to understand people, of wanting to go deeper and not just write people off.
When
Yeah.
did you first realize that maybe your family wasn't perfect and you noticed in hindsight that there was a mismatch in what you
Mhm.
needed?
I would say that I knew my family wasn't perfect from the get-go, but I didn't expect anyone's family to be so. I always understood that they were doing the best that they could. When I began to understand as I got older was really how different some of our experiences were. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And
Yeah.
so growing up, my grandmother was very strict. There was corporal punishment in our house. That was just normal. I didn't actually understand that other families didn't, that you didn't have to do that. And in fact, when I became a godmother and I've got these beautiful boys, I was like my grandmother with them, but I'm only the godmom. I'm not the mom. And watching their parents, the boys' parents, raise them was probably one of the most valuable lessons. That's when I started to recognize that, oh, well, maybe this wasn't right, because what I learned is that kids can make mistakes and they don't have to get a switch. That
Right.
that you can actually have a conversation with an 8-year-old and explain why they shouldn't do something or why something might be dangerous, that everything didn't have to come with this kind of severe punishment that just was normalized in my household, right?
Yeah.
And it was not until I saw something different that I recognized that the way that we were raised was not, it's hard to say not the best way. It worked for us, but there was another way. There was a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. What was that first moment like when you realized that maybe things were different in the situation with your godchildren
Mhm.
and that not everyone's experiences were the same?
From the perspective of being with my godchildren, I was kind of in awe, and I really, maybe even in some points, I'd hate to admit this, that I didn't believe it was gonna work. Like, I thought there was only one way. I thought that, of course, you have to spank a kid, you have to do that, and the more and more I watched and learned and saw the way that boys responded and how they shifted their behavior, that's for me was that aha moment. And there was some resentment and some anger. I have some particular moments that I realize still have a trigger for me of being disciplined, overly disciplined for something that it was where the punishment far outweighed the crime kind of thing. But what I really understood more was my grandmother was born in 1912 Alabama during Jim Crow, and where one mistake by a black child could actually mean the end of that black child's life. And so she's the main caretaker of us. And the way she shows love is through protection. She shows love by making sure we don't make the mistake that might cause us to have our life ended. And it sounds dramatic, but that is truly her experience growing up in Alabama. So I really had to find this place of understanding and of really forgiveness that she truly was doing the best she could with what she knew how to do. She didn't know a different way. That's how she protected us. But it was still this dissonance of knowing that there was another way. She just didn't know it.
What was that journey like for you going from, first of all, awareness that things didn't have to be this way to maybe frustration and confusion and sadness around that being your experience, and then finding a new path? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah. I'll focus on the sadness because I think that's probably the best word
Yeah.
for it. The sadness that came up in me in realizing that people have to live that way anyway, right? That idea that you are so afraid that your children may not come back home if they make one mistake. That can bring me to tears right now, just thinking about that. And so when I think about historical trauma, I think that's part of that pattern, right? It's that you only can pass down what you know. You pass down your experiences and you do the best you can, and hopefully you learn from the things that you can. And so I think that for me, it's still, as you can see, it's still something that
Yeah.
um that that touches me because I think it's sad to have to live your life afraid or to live your life worried all the time and to just be in that place. I think it takes a lot of energy and it doesn't allow you to live your best life because all your energy is focused on negative things. And I think negative energy brings negative implications to our bodies, right?
Yeah. What do you think was that first moment where you moved from maybe sadness or frustration or confusion into compassion for a lived experience that maybe you weren't aware of before?
Yeah, I would say that that probably came with my boys, my godchildren, and really in seeing the like the juxtaposition of what I experience and understanding that both serve the purpose. Like this is the aspiration, right? This is where we want to go, and really just knowing that my grandmother didn't have the tools. And once you understand that someone just doesn't have the tools, it actually releases a lot of resentment. It releases a lot of anger because I can't make you or wish you do something that you don't have the power or knowledge or ability to do.
How have you noticed these patterns and this awareness as it was passed down to you flow through the generations after your grandmother?
I would say for the kids, so there's 5 of us, 5 siblings that were raised by my grandmother. I actually chose not to have children, so that's how it came down to me, was that I didn't want to live in fear of whether or not I could protect my children. And I know exactly when I realized that. It was actually in a room of 200 people, and I'm doing a session, and someone asked me a question, and I wanted to answer it honestly, so I stopped and thought about it. And I finally had to admit that the reason I didn't have children was because I was afraid I couldn't protect them. And
Wow.
until that moment, and I had a full moment in this room, and until that moment, I really resisted any idea of thinking about it, of thinking about
Yeah.
why that hadn't happened. Because in my mind, I always thought I would have kids. It was never a conscious, I'm not having children, right?
Yeah.
But there was always a reason not to. There was always a way not to, right?
Yeah.
I think for my brothers, they carried on the kind of corporal's punishment. Their kids all got spanked. And when my sister, I'm a twin, when she decided not to spank her children, that was a conscious choice for her because she had also seen through her partner that there was another way. My brother, one of her kids was doing something that my brother didn't like, and he gave her her first spanking. And my sister was absolutely live it. Like, I don't spank my child, but this idea that that's what they know and that's what they did and that was the only way. And so I think each of us, 2 of my brothers have now passed away, but each of us have that one particular thing. I think there's other things we've taken, also really wonderful things we've taken, but that whole idea that keeping our kids safe, the corporal punishment was something that we all took, and each of us, it manifested differently for each of us.
Yeah. That's so powerful, noticing that that awareness is so important.
Mhm.
We can find ourselves trapped
Yeah.
so often by the generational traumas
Yes.
of the men and women that come before us.
Mhm.
And having that aha moment for you is a huge awakening experience. Not only that, but recognizing the ripple effect, not
Mm.
only through you, but through your family too.
Yeah. And stopping the cycle, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's my commitment right now is how do
Yeah.
we stop the cycle? So we have 16 nieces and nephews who are also now parents and really talking my family, we didn't talk about things. We just kind of lived life and we made jokes. We used humor to deflect. And with our nieces and nephews, we talk about everything. There's nothing that's off limits. And so they also are in this place of breaking those patterns that they don't have to carry anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely. You mentioned a lot of compassion for your grandmother
Mhm.
and awareness that these, for example, corporal punishments didn't come from nowhere, they came from protection. I'm curious, what do you feel like is the difference between forgiveness and compassion and where understanding comes in the mix with that?
I think compassion is really understand it's empathy, like a level of being able to be curious about why or what has been the driver for something that I don't like, let's say, right? Some behavior or something that happens. And being curious enough to seek to understand where it's coming from And I think that helps me be a better listener. That I think that's a compassionate piece, that it doesn't mean that I might forgive the person in the end. And I think that is a difference, is that compassion doesn't always lead necessarily to forgiveness, but it leads to understanding. And a lot of times, I don't know, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, but a lot of times I find that when I'm thinking about forgiveness, a lot of times I'm also forgiving myself. I'm forgiving myself for falling into a trap, or
Yeah.
for not being authentic or whatever. And most of the time, that's a forgiveness that really matters most, because if our moving forward is dependent on forgiving other people, we may not be able to move forward. And so I really think that the compassion piece, the understanding piece, allows me to separate me from that issue, and I can release its hold on me, its attack. And that for me, I think, is a difference. I don't know that for me that forgiveness is absolute. Um,
Mm,
but I think I can understand. I mean, there's things I know that I probably will never forgive, but I totally understand them. And then that lets me forgive myself. That lets me let go. That takes its power over me away.
absolutely. And the word forgiveness is such a loaded word,
Mhm.
isn't it? Forgiveness and permission can
Mhm.
often be so intricately linked. And I think it's a really important journey for every single person to go on to explore what the word forgiveness means for them. Because if forgiveness is interlinked with permission, then
Yeah.
we'll never give ourselves the freedom to experience peace. And I
Mhm.
love how you're exploring that distinction by interweaving what compassion is and understanding is versus forgiveness is linked with permission.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that resonates.
Mm, yeah. I'm wondering, through your experience, do you feel like there's a way to love a family that wasn't perfect when you're looking at it honestly?
I do. I do. And again, I think that that compassion piece, that seeking to understand piece, was crucial for that. My middle brother and I had a very tumultuous relationship from pretty much from day one, from the beginning. And my youngest brother, who was my favorite, I know we're not supposed to have favorites, but we do. He passed away when I was 29. And my roommate at the time, she said, "Which one was it?" And I said, "It was Ray." And she said, "Oh, I was hoping it wasn't him," because she knew about our relationship. And what it did, though, was in that moment, split second, I ran the scenario of losing every one of my siblings. And I started crying. And of course, my friend thinks I'm crying because she thinks she's been insensitive by saying, "Oh, I hope it wasn't him." But what I realized was that I really had a love for them that I didn't think I had, because when I ran it through, there was not one of them that I would have preferred to have died in his place. And that was a real, I don't know if I would have answered that way. That was a
Wow.
real aha for me. And so what it made me do, though, was you lose someone that you love, that you adore, and you have to make some sense. At least I have to make some sense out of it. I don't want to say what other people have to do. But it can't just it could just be a dark well, because that's kind of where I went. And so I had to find some light in it. And so the light was, since I don't have a good relationship with my middle brother, I need to heal this, because if it were him, I would have felt guilt. I would have felt very unresolved. I would have had all these feelings because I didn't like him. And so that was the beginning of my journey in healing that relationship. And I literally called them up. I was 29 years old, and I said, "We're going to figure this out, because if you die, I don't want to feel like I know I would feel."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so powerful and that's so moving. I need to heal this with him,
Yeah.
even though there has been years of
Yeah.
estrangement or
Yeah.
disconnection or pain and hurt and suffering in that relationship.
Yeah. May I share another piece with you?
Yes, please.
And I think this is an important piece when I also think about who listens to this, is that
Yeah.
when I got him to come to meet me and start this process with me, I shared with him one of the most painful memories I had, which was around when I was 16 years old. And I shared it with him, and he didn't remember.
Wow.
And I think that for me was like, I've been carrying this around, and I have been angry for, at that point, 13 years. And he didn't even remember it. And when I think about, and this is the letting go, right? This is the Sankofa. This is all that is like, when I think about what it did to me for all those years, for something that for him was insignificant, was not important, and to go back and he didn't remember, he's like, I'm sorry. I believe I did that, but I don't remember it." It didn't have the same impact. And I wonder how much we carry around that people have no recollection of. The
Yeah.
anger and the hate and the animosity, all those things that we carry, and the person that we think is responsible for that doesn't even, it has
Yeah.
nothing. It's doing nothing to them, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big moment for me, a realization moment that
Yeah.
all this anger and hate I'm carrying around, it was just me, and I was the only person I was hurting.
It really speaks into that phrase around hating others as a poison that we drink for ourselves,
Yes, yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you were having a conversation with someone right now who does feel a level of estrangement, who does feel a level of anger, who does feel a level of bitterness and fear and hurt and confusion over a specific relationship with a family member. What would you say to them right now as someone who has had a very difficult conversation with someone who you believed was not safe to have a relationship with? If they are still in that season of, "No, this is never gonna happen, it'll never help, and why would I put myself in that situation? That would just be dangerous."
Mhm.
What would you say to them right now?
I go back to that kind of internal protocol that I talked about, and I think the first thing is that it's gotta be that self-reflection. It's about me understanding, 1, what's happening in my body? What am I f and what is the feeling? Like, I gotta name that. If I'm
Yeah,
not honest enough to name that I'm hurt or angry or humiliated or whatever that is, then everything is gonna be superficial. It's not gonna actually get to the heart of whatever the issue is, and so there's
yeah.
gotta be a willingness to look at yourself. And so that's the first place I would start, would be when you think about this situation or this person, what's happening to you? And get a grip on that
Mm,
first. Because then when you can recognize what's happening to you, you start to notice your body is giving you messages. And sometimes we don't have the language to connect the two. But if we stop and listen, understand that our body is so wise and it knows far before our brain can actually name something, that we can actually start to get some of the answers there by understanding what is happening to us.
yeah,
What am I feeling? And then where is it coming from?
yeah. By connecting in with our body, we begin to invite real discernment around
Mhm.
what's possible versus what's protection and hatred and
Mhm.
a poison that we're
Yes.
drinking for ourselves.
Yes. Yes. So that's where I start. I think it's always about starting with ourselves because there's people that I work with and I know and friends I talk with who some of the situations are trying to heal. The people aren't around to heal it. And so how do you heal that? It's one
Yeah,
thing. My brother was alive at the time. So I was able to heal it directly, but he also could have been super resistant to it. He could have said no. But I think the loss of my brother also impacted him to want to do this. But what happens when the people aren't there? Or they're not willing to go on that journey with you, we still
yeah.
have to figure out how to heal it within ourselves.
Absolutely. And what would you say to someone maybe who is feeling resentful and frustrated and angry that they even need to consider doing the work themselves because it's the other person's fault?
I know that there are times, but I rarely find that it's that there's not a role for me in it.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like, I
Yeah.
rarely find if I look, even when I look with my brother, I can see what parts of me, whether or not they were things I could change. For my brother, it turned out that I reminded him of my mother. That was my
Wow.
crime. My crime was
Wow.
being like my mother, really. And she left us, and so he was always his thing was, "You're gonna leave us, you're gonna leave too, and so I'm not gonna put
Wow.
any energy into you," right? And so I couldn't change that, but understanding that allows it. So I think for people, I think that the first thing is whether or not they want to, there's gotta be that self-reflection of, "Do I have a role in this? Do I have any responsibility?" Their answer may be no, but I think we still have to ask that question. Because if we
Um,
can't honestly look and see, like, have I maybe I didn't start it, but am I perpetuating it? Have I
Interesting.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have I because if I have a belief that he's this, then what are my behaviors that are reinforcing that he's this?
Mm. Right. I love that differentiation between the trigger versus the reinforcement. We might not have started it, but are we allowing this to live and to thrive and this toxicity to continue?
Yes.
And is it serving me?
Yes. Yes. And sometimes I think in the beginning, like there's one thing I talk about in my earlier book is about how I used to lie. Lying was also one of those things. I grew up lying about my age because I had to start working when I was 11 years old. And lying was a survival strategy. But
Right.
when I was 23, 24, it was just a habit. It wasn't necessary anymore, but I still did it. But every time I did it, there was this level of shame about lying because sometimes it would, make me look better to people or to inflate my self-worth. And I remember distinctly a day where I just said, the next time I lie, I'm going to own it and I'm going to end that moment. And so God is good. I kind of did it almost immediately and it was
Wow.
completely unnecessary. And I was not brave enough to call the woman back who I lied to. But what I did do was I wrote her a letter and I explained to her why. I told her that I lied and I apologized. And then I sat on that for about 3 months until I was going to see her at this tournament. And I walked up to her and I literally, I was petrified. I was really, because I didn't know how she was going to react to me. And she walked up and she gave me a hug and she said, thank you. And that was it. And honestly, it was the best case scenario. But even if she didn't talk to me again or whatever, it wasn't about her. It was about
Wow.
me changing my behavior because I wasn't proud. I wasn't happy with what I was doing. And so how do I hold myself accountable in those moments when I'm not in my living my highest purpose?
Wow. Yeah. I think that that painted I just got goosebumps. I think that that was such a beautiful picture there of how often the repair that we even consider initiating with others has nothing to do with the person at
Yeah.
all, and
Yeah.
everything to do with the relationship that we have with the person that we think that we are.
Yes. Yes. That's said so beautifully. I mean, that is perfect because I think that where this falls apart for people is that they get tied to the outcome. They think, well, I've done this work. And so I took the first step and you have to accept it. Well, no, they don't actually. And it's because we have an expectation of a certain outcome that we start to spin that wheel and perpetuate that if it doesn't go the way we hope. And so I always say that I can hope for an outcome, but I can't expect an outcome. And so my focus is always on the process.
Right. Can you talk a little bit more about the freedom that you found through that release of the outcome and moving away from, "I'm only safe if the other person responds to me the way that I want."
Yeah, it actually has given me more courage to have more conversations and lean in where I might have walked away. Because when you're tied to an outcome and you don't think you're going to get that outcome, it's actually easier to avoid. And so, because I'm more focused on the process, I'm always going to have a process. I'm always going to get a process. And so I get what I need to either heal myself, to heal the relationship, to whatever it is in the process. And then the outcome is like brownie points, if it works.
Wow, the outcome is brownie points.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Whereas the experience, the internal experience is the meal.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Wow. That's really profound, particularly for people who are feeling like the only 2 options are cut someone off to feel safe
yes.
or connect and be in danger.
Yeah.
Right. What do you feel like it means to love a family that is complex in a way that's healthy? What's that picture for you?
For me, it starts with boundaries that I love my family, but I have really good boundaries, particularly with my mother. That's one that has been years in the work. And I'm not going to say that I'm perfect. I can say that there's moments where the boundary slips, but I find that with my mom, if I'm consistent and setting boundaries, then she will respond to them because she wants this relationship and she values this relationship. It would be nice to say it once, like with my brother, I didn't have to do it multiple times. We just had to work through it and he got it. And our relationship for the last 20 years of his life was beautiful. It was evolved, but it was beautiful. But with my mom, honestly, have to say that I set the same boundaries probably every few months because she forgets, she gets in her head, she gets in her space, and she does what she wants. And then I have to set a boundary again. But she's my mother. I love her. And again, I know that she's done the best she can with what she has and what she's been given. And so, in order for me to stay in relationship with her, I've got to be clear because if I'm
Yeah.
not, then I'll end up being angry and it could easily get to a point where I wouldn't want anything to do with her.
Absolutely. There are many people that believe when repeating a boundary again and again and again, and it's not respected,
Hmm.
that that is a clear sign that the relationship should end.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not in disagreement. And this is my mother. She gets a pass that maybe not everybody would get. And that's just honest. I don't know that I would have given or continue to give as much effort. In fact, I do know that I probably wouldn't if it wasn't my mom.
Yeah.
And I know, and I'm not saying that somehow it's sacred that she's my mom and that you should do this for mothers. I don't actually think so, but my mom can't cause me harm anymore because I've set my own boundaries. And so
Yeah.
if she were to harm if she were in a position where she could actually cause me harm, then I wouldn't be above severing the relationship, but she
Right.
just can't.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that she can't cause me harm allows me to maintain that relationship. And I do love her. I do. There's moments when I see her and it just I'm like, I see, the potential. I see the struggle. I see it all. And I see her as this very complicated tapestry that and there's times where the ugly stitching comes out, and I just gotta
Yes.
help her tuck it back in.
Wow. That's really beautiful. That's a beautiful analogy. The stitching comes out. You just got to help her to tuck it back in.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say to someone who maybe feels like their only options are really to love someone from a distance or to sit in the complexity and the fear and the worry that opening that door to having a complex conversation could mean that they are unsafe emotionally or otherwise?
I always make this distinction between safety and discomfort. And it's
Yes,
a big distinction.
huge.
So, first, for ourselves, we have to define them for ourselves, right? I can't tell you what safe is for you. I can only say what it is for me. But once we know the difference, I think that we use safety as a detour to keep us from having those difficult conversations because we're uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so, you first have to really know, are you unsafe or are you uncomfortable? Because my thing is if I'm unsafe, then you don't ever need to put yourself in a place where you are unsafe, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually. But if you're uncomfortable, that's an invitation to lean in for me,
Mm.
right? And so
Yeah.
I actually have this little diagram that I show to kind of explain this, and it's all these squiggly lines, right? And it's about how when we start to feel something, our instinct is to go, "Oh, I'm not safe," and so we go off, we go numb, and we jump off, we
Yeah.
stop pursuing it. But really, if you can just make it through to the other side and let your body, and this goes back to that bodily intelligence, let your body tell you, how does your body tell you you're unsafe? And listen. And if your
Yeah.
body is like, no, you're not, for me, butterflies and my stomach is discomfort, hairs in the back of my neck are unsafe. So if the hairs in the back of my neck are going off, I'm going out. I'm getting out of here. But
Right.
if I got butterflies or if I'm sweating or if I'm flushed,
Yeah.
then I'm like, "Okay, I'm uncomfortable," and then I get to choose whether or not
Yes.
I want to lean. Because again, discomfort doesn't mean that you have to lean in, but it's a choice that says, "Okay, I'm not in danger, and so if this is something that's important to me or something that I value, then I have the opportunity to lean into this discomfort." But I think that the first thing is we have to figure out what safety is for us and what that means and if
Hmm.
it's truly what it is, because at least in my work, I think that safety has become a detour from actually engaging because it's an easy way out.
Oh, there are so many people that are just gonna be called out right now big time. Safety is not the same as comfort.
Yeah, no.
It's not the same thing. And I think something I've noticed, particularly, let's say, with the millennial generation, is they're the first generation that was really taught about boundaries, that was
Mhm,
really taught about how to caretake
mhm.
what is important for them emotionally, not just physically. And I think that there's a correction phase that's happening right now what is the difference between a boundary and a wall? What is the difference between safety and comfort? What actually is a lack of safety and what actually is discomfort? And is there that awareness for this next generation, the next generations to come, that the cost of community is inconvenience. The cost of community is healthy discomfort. The cost of community is doing some of the internal work and exploring the possibility that maybe it doesn't have to be a yes or a no, a black or a
Yes.
white, and
Yes.
we must be together or apart.
Yes, yes, the gray, right? I talk a lot about this binary, this good bad binary, that it's either or, and we sell ourselves short that way. You cannot be in community with people and have that binary exist that there's either or, right? There's a whole lot of gray and we've got to figure that out. And I do appreciate you sharing this idea that we are due for a correction around that, because I think that what I hear and what I see happening is this: you make one mistake and it's almost like we don't get to be human
Absolutely.
anymore,
Yep.
right? I'm a human with some flaws, and so I'm gonna put my foot in it every now
Yeah.
and then. And what I want is understanding. I want, and I want someone to hold me accountable though. I don't
Yes.
think it's okay for me to put my foot in it and hurt your
Yes.
feelings. I think you can tell me, but and I can be
Yeah.
open to
Yeah.
hearing that. But
Yeah.
at least give me like, where is our innovation if we are afraid to take risk?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that we're in a course correction phase
Mhm.
because there are so many people afraid to even offer that gift of healing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
accountability because the risk is that offering information about a behavior is the same as criticizing identity. And people don't know how to receive that information as loving. And there are many people who don't know how to communicate that as loving because it's so threatening, because it's so scary. And often, a lot of the work that I do is helping people discern between what is loving support versus what is criticism, because it's so loaded. It's so loaded now. And that line has become blurred because the risks are so high. And so, in order to communicate a feeling or a need, it has to be extreme enough to be worth it, the cost of losing the relationship, you know? And that's, I think, something that's so important about exploring connection, exploring relationships in a way that figures out not only how can we heal this for our own selves, but to create another generation that has resilience, right?
Yes. Yeah. And understands that relationships are supposed to be messy.
Right.
Like this idea that they're going to be perfect and flawless and without any discomfort or disagreements is unrealistic. That you just can't have two people together and have that be the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering if someone's listening and maybe they are thinking of a friendship or a family member or a partner or a sibling who they feel estranged from right now. Is it ever too late to look back honestly and start exploring what is possible or what is not able to be changed?
I love that. I don't think so. One of the things that I like to have people think about is, like, think of an issue that you're carrying with you that feels unresolved to you, right?
Ye-
That you wish you could or you wish you would have or whatever. And if you can think of something, and usually I've not seen anyone yet not come up with something within 30 seconds. And then the next question I say is now I want you to think about what it would feel like to be able to let that go. And what comes up for people is always up there, like, and I have now, but it's like, oh, I can exhale. Oh, my shoulders relax. It's this kind of visceral response to not having to carry whatever that is around. And that's, I think, the invitation is to, it's not too late, because if you're still thinking about it, it's still important. Doesn't matter if it's 20 years ago, 50 years ago for some of us, or yesterday. If you're still thinking about it and you can pull it to your mind as an unresolved issue in 30 seconds, then there's still work to do around it. Whether it's work with the other person, maybe, maybe not, but then there's still work for you for sure.
I love that. I feel like that's so powerful. And what about for those people who really are resonating with a lot of what you're saying,
Mhm,
but they have such an intense fear around the
mhm.
backfire from even considering there being a possibility of reconnecting, or even just not necessarily having the conversation, but being open to the
Mhm.
possibility of a different perspective.
Yeah. I think a question I like to ask is, what is the worst that can happen? And this kind of goes back to that safety and discomfort thing. If I actually say what I need to say, what's the worst that can happen? And so maybe the worst is that the person yells at me and never speaks to me. Like, can you live with that? And so this again is that self-work. It's like you've got to figure out, because that fear is paralyzing. And we build up I will say that a good portion of the times the things that we think are going to happen in those interactions actually don't manifest if we engage with curiosity and with compassion. Usually you end up having a dialogue that you just didn't expect to have. The person, and usually if you're feeling a certain way, unlike my brother, the person that you're having it with is not usually unaware of it. So while my brother didn't remember the particulars, we were estranged and that was mutual. So there was also a desire in him to heal,
Right.
but he didn't know how to do it. And so I think that's part of it, is that we're always focused on ourselves and our experiences, that we forget that the other person is also having an experience about this situation possibly as well too. And so I think the idea that we make assumptions about the outcomes is what gets in our way of actually stepping in. And so if we need to make assumptions, jot down the worst that could happen, all the possibilities that you think could happen, and then ask yourself, can you live with those?
Yeah.
And is it more preferable? Can you live with that? Or is it preferable to stay stuck where you are? Can you live
Yeah.
with this too? Right? Like, is this tenable for you as well?
Yeah. I love that. I feel like that's so powerful around just exploring that comfort level of
Mhm.
what is possible
Yeah.
within your own body
Mhm.
first.
Yeah. I think it starts with us all the time.
Yeah. I really love the statistic as well that in my own life, I have been in many scenarios where there's been difficult conversations, where there's been estrangement, where there's been resentment, where there's been frustration, and where it's seemed impossible. And the only times where it has stayed that way, you have a 100% guarantee of it staying that way and from living that way by continuing to make those same decisions and continuing to have those same beliefs.
Yes.
And when you explore that maybe things could be possible, maybe things could be different, what is the percentage of chance that in all sorts of different relationships, friendships, family, intimate relationships, that possibility unfolds if you explore that?
Mhm.
Because it's not 100% staying the same it would be as if you did nothing.
Yeah.
And what I would say when I look back on my life of those difficult conversations I've had or the curiosities that I've had, anytime I've brought curiosity to the table and openness
Mhm.
about possibility,
Mhm.
I would say maybe I'm sitting at about an 80% return.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay?
And that's a good return, right?
It is. Look, I'm not gonna lie, the 20% where it goes
Mhm.
wrong, ooh, it hurts. You
Yeah.
know, it's savage, it hurts your heart, you feel like a fool, you feel like you failed, shouldn't have tried, all sorts of things. And then when I look back about all the times I've tried, I wouldn't trade all the
Yes.
80% for the 20% where things went wrong. And for those 20% where things went wrong, I'm still glad that I can tick that box and go, hey, I feel good that I'm the one who tried that. And I'm the one who experimented. And I'm the one who explored and reached out. And it gives you that discernment to find out, okay, well, what is my comfort zone?
Yeah.
Where is my level of readiness?
Mhm.
And I think that when we just start exploring that curiosity, really magical things start to happen.
Absolutely.
What would be your take on that?
Yeah, well, what I was gonna say, what I love about that is, and I think about your 20% that where it just hurts and whatever,
Mm,
and it's still a lesson.
yes.
And you've gotten clarity. So if there was any
Hmm.
hope that this could be something different, now, right?
I
And
do.
so
Yeah.
it moves its pole position in your body of taking up space of uncertainty, and it gets put into a place where of certainty, where
Oh,
this
yeah.
this relationship, whatever, no longer serves me. This is I always say reason, season, lifetime.
Oh,
And
yeah. Absolutely.
sometimes it's a season, sometimes
Yes,
it's a
I love
reason.
that.
And so that 20% is valuable too. And so when I think about all that you shared, the thing that comes to my mind is this idea that you have been building a muscle,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
You are, every time you take that risk, every time you take that step and you have that controversial, difficult conversation and you're getting 80/20, I still think that's a great return.
It's an
Um,
amazing return, and it's such an amazing return for me because even some of the relationships and friendships where I didn't do anything, but
mhm,
I felt closure
mhm.
from the
Yeah.
efforts that I had made, and
Yes.
I felt bravery, I felt compassion, I felt
Mhm.
curiosity, but also completion.
Mhm.
When I felt proud of my decisions, it's blown my mind
Yes.
over the friendships that have reconnected simply
Mm.
because I felt proud of myself, not
Yes.
because I initiated the conversation,
Right.
but sometimes years have passed and then that reconnection has happened organically and naturally because I've been proud of my decisions. And that has allowed the other person to maybe, let's say, step into accountability or step into
Mhm.
awareness.
Yep.
And I think looking back, or, and I can think of one particular conversation I had that may not have ended well, but I sent a bunch of flowers and left the door open.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Again, season. Sometimes
Yeah.
relationships can be
Yeah.
a season. And I feel that completion there. And I think there's only one conversation in hindsight. So this is not even 80/20. It's like 1% where I have felt that bravery and I'm like, let's be vulnerable. Let's get curious. And oh, Dr. Nancy didn't end well. I ended up with egg on my face. I felt like about this big.
Mhm.
And at the time it was awful, but you're 100% right. I felt when the dust settled how proud I was
Yeah.
that I showed up as the person that I wanted to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that I don't feel any curiosity, the door is not open, I wish them love and all those wonderful things, but there's such a door closed, like a
Yeah.
completion. There's
Yeah.
no resentment, there's no
Well,
anger, it's just, "Ooh, glad
and
that's" yeah, complete.
and that is the goal, right? And so it's
Right.
not, when I talk about my work around compassionate dialogue, I start off by saying compassionate dialogue does not equal warm and fuzzy. So people hear compassionate dialogue and they think it's going to be easy. They think it's going to be all soft. And I will say that it's probably one of the hardest things you're ever going to do, to step into that discomfort, to have those, difficult conversations, to be curious and to allow yourself to be vulnerable for someone to take advantage of it, if you put it out there. And I just say that my little tip for me is that, like, so for me, I was listening to something and I wish I could remember, but you were talking about fight or flight, or the responses. And so our conflict reactions minus fight. But there's something, I think that we've traditionally been conditioned to look at that like it's a problem. And the way I look at it is like it's a tool. It's
Mm.
something that I've got in my back pocket, right? So if I need it, it's there. A fight shows up for me. I'm not a physical fighter, but I'm
Yeah.
extremely sarcastic.
Yeah.
I use humor as a detour. And so what I realize is that because I know it's there, I'm willing to be vulnerable. And if you abuse the
Right.
gift of vulnerability, then you know what? I got something for you. it's right in my it's in my back pocket. And here we go. You know what I mean? So there's something in that, and I think if we could as individually find that kind of little secret weapon that we have, that we know that if we need it, it's available to us.
Yes, I
So
love that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That way, I think that that gives people a real sense of, okay, exploring possibility in complex relationships doesn't have to mean that we drop the protection
Right.
that we are familiar with that has kept us safe for so
That's
long.
right. That's right.
We can just put it in our pocket.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that that's a really beautiful stepping stone
Yeah.
to exploration.
Yeah.
And something that I love to do with all of my clients is give them the picture that we don't have to drop our armor. We don't have to
Mhm.
drop the thing that's keeping us safe. How about we explore evolving it,
Yeah.
so that it can become a bridge,
Yes.
that still a bridge. There's doorways on the bridge and people need permission across the bridge,
Mhm.
but it's very different to a wall, right?
Yes. Yes. And sometimes the gate is down on the bridge, but
Right.
if you do what you need to do, the gate can also possibly reopen. Yeah,
And
possibly. Doesn't have to.
Yeah, and I think what I really love what you shared the most around that, and something that has been so beneficial to my life is the word season. I
Hmm.
think there's such a finality that
Hmm.
people walk around viewing their relationships as. I'm not the same person I was 5 minutes ago. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, and I'm certainly not the same person I was when I was 3 or 10 or 20. Gosh, I hope I'm not.
Seriously.
And I think if I'm gonna give myself that grace, it's very healing for me to open up the possibility that other people have the capacity to evolve too, because that freedom for me, that freedom for others means I can give it to myself. And I have experienced that. I've experienced estrangement with family members. I have experienced healing with family members in situations that looked impossible.
Hmm.
And if I could write a book, Days of Our Lives, let's go hang out. And if there's nothing that others leave this episode with except that peace and grace around, we don't know what the next season is going to be, and it might be the best season yet,
Hmm.
then suddenly we offer ourselves more grace. We're allowed to grow, we're allowed to evolve. And that allows curiosity and play to come back into relationships
Yeah.
again, as opposed to, are you dangerous to me or are you safe? And those are the
Hmm.
two only binary
Yes.
possibilities.
Yes. I love that. And the grace, like grace really sticks out to me, like giving ourselves grace and then giving others grace. And grace again is it's not forgiveness necessarily.
Mm,
We change, we grow, we evolve, and some people grow with us and some people don't. And that's the attachment piece again, is that if we can release the attachment or the idea that something's supposed to last forever and that if it doesn't, somehow something's wrong, that really it's just not. My girlfriend has this analogy of bleachers. She says, "You got your front row bleachers, which are the people that are close to you, and then as it goes out, there's still people in your realm, your sphere, but they're further removed." And she says, "The bleachers, sometimes people are here, but then later in life, they're back here. They're still in your sphere. They're still you
yeah.
still love them, but
Yeah.
they just don't hold the same space." And
Yeah.
I think that really helped me in understanding because I felt like there was always a loss. When someone
Yes.
left that front bleacher that had been there for 10 years or 1 year, whatever, that somehow there was a loss instead of really understanding that it was an evolutional change.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite tools that I use in my own life and I try to teach my clients is something, it's my favorite phrase, connected boundaries.
Mhm. Mhm.
What layer of the bleachers are they at?
Mhm.
You don't have to have someone, and this is what I genuinely used to feel. Either you were a safe person
Mhm.
or you were an unsafe
Yeah.
person, and there
Yeah.
was no in between. But
Yeah.
connected boundaries allow you to have that vision, that visual, and that picture and that experience around, okay, well, you might be at the front of my bleachers. You might be the next row behind. I don't have to put you in a black and white box.
Yes.
Love
Yeah.
the bleachers analogy. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
good one. Not mine, but it's a good one.
It's beautiful. We've got circles in Rise. We use layers of the circles and we're going
Yeah.
to start using bleachers. It's a really cool visual.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I would love to, before we hear a little bit more about your work and where others can find you to take this conversation a little bit deeper, I'd love to do a little bit of like a hot seat game.
Okay.
So, 5 questions. I would love to hear what the answer is that first comes to your mind. No overthinking,
Okay.
in just like one sentence or in as few words as you can think of. So, are you ready?
I think so.
All right, let's go. Okay, first question. What do you feel is one word that your family would have used to describe you as a kid?
Sensitive.
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to add one here that's not on my list, but I want to know, what was the one word that you would describe yourself as a kid now?
Oh, outgoing.
Oh, I love that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Second official question. What is the
Okay.
moment that you knew you were healing, not just coping?
Oh, when my brother passed away and I became conscious of healing is an action, right? It's something that you have to put energy to. It isn't just going to happen. I had to do something. And even though I'm the baby and he's older, I think I had this thing about you're older, you're supposed to take care of it. That if I recognize it, then it's my responsibility.
Oh, I love that. If I recognize it's my responsibility, that's freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's a pattern that you're proud that you broke?
Lying.
Ah, that's so good. That's gonna resonate with so many people
Yeah.
who feel like they don't wanna say it out loud,
Yeah.
but
That
maybe
much
there's white
shame.
lies that run their life.
Yes. And so much shame
Yeah,
behind it.
love
So,
that.
yeah.
That's beautiful. What is the hardest sentence to say out loud about your family?
Oh, the hardest sentence. I would say that we weren't perfect. That's hard because it wasn't for a lack of love and it wasn't for a lack of desire. It just was
Yes.
for a lack of experience.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Last question. What do you think looking back taught you?
I would say probably the biggest lesson was really compassion for myself, right? Like giving myself grace
Right.
that I've made mistakes and that I wasn't always the best version of myself. And that was part of my evolution, my human experience to be who I
Yeah,
am today, who I'm proud of, who I love. But it
yeah,
was, yeah.
yeah. I love that. I feel like this episode has cracked my heart open and just allowed this complex conversation around imperfect families to feel safe. And so, if I feel that, I know that the audience is feeling that right now. And so, I would love to hear a little bit more about where any of the listeners can find you to continue the conversation, to learn more about your work. What are your current offers? How can the listeners dive in a little bit deeper and get to know you more?
Yeah, my website's a great place to start. And actually, I have one that's branded by my name. It's drnancydome.com. And it's a good place to listen to other podcasts I've done and get my work. I have my new book, which is Glimmers. And this is really what began that journey. It was inspired by the Sankofa imagery and yeah, this idea of healing, so I think that's a place to look. I'm trying to start a movement, and it's because what's happened with this book coming out is that I've gotten, and I loved your website. I did do a little stalking to find out, who I'm talking to. And I love that you took the text messages and just highlighted the things. And it just gave me an idea. I won't steal that idea, though it's a lovely idea. But
Go for it.
what's been happening is people have been sending me emails and text messages about the book, and it's how I knew that the book hit its mark, right? Because even though it's a memoir, it wasn't about like this. It's not a sad story. It's not a woe is me. It's not like it's really about healing. And what I was hoping was not so much that you understood me, but that you saw yourself in my stories so that
Yeah.
you could heal yourself in your stories, right?
Yes.
And so the stuff I'm getting back is really nothing about me, which I love. It's really about what it has inspired them to literally like talk. One person said she's now going to have a conversation with her sister who she just thought the relationship was over, and
Um,
stories like that. And so we're looking at a hashtag my glimmers where people, if they want to email, we want to create just
yeah.
where people can share their glimmers. They're looking back, the things that they've healed, the things that have contributed to who they are today. And I think that's, if I can finish on one thing, I think that an important piece is that even though we look at something and we have a judgment about whether it's good or bad, I think that we forget that everything contributes to who we are, and that we can always find light in the shadow. There's always another side. And so that's the invitation, is to not dwell in the darkness, but to seek out the light. And sometimes it means actively seeking it out, but that we all have the possibility to do that.
Oh gosh, yeah. Absolutely. I love that, and that's so, so, so powerful. And I really hope that you steal that idea and put all those messages on your site because I wanna see them. I've loved seeing myself in your work as
Mm.
well. So
Yeah.
thank you, Dr. Nancy. You are a blessing, and I
Yeah.
know that this episode is really going to change lives. So thank you so much for sharing your heart. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing your story, and thank you so much for being a ripple in the world that I know
Yeah.
is going to change things for the better.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lauren. I've really enjoyed my time with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nancy. It's been so joyous to spend this time with you. And I would also love to know if the audience would love to follow you along on socials. Where is the best place to hang out?
Yeah, I would love it. There's Instagram, and it's all Dr. Nancy Dome. So that's going to be the key phrase that gets you to everything
Right.
that's me. And then we're on Facebook as well.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to pop that in the show notes.
Yep.
And I can't wait to continue the conversation. And if this has brought up something for you as a listener and you want to dive a little bit deeper and you want to continue the conversation, please feel free to come and hang out with me on Instagram as well. That's my home at Lauren_dry. And I can't wait to hear more about what you want to hear on the Connection Podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe. And we're going to continue the conversation on the Connection Podcast. So thank you so much for being here. And I'll see you over on the next episode. Big love.